Thought leadership thrives in the world of dark social. And no matter how active your organization might be, your target audiences will always be talking about ideas. And that's true whether your employees are around or not. Your audiences will be talking about ideas through private emails, private chats, and other interactions that we just can't see. So how do we move past worry and learn to love dark social? I've invited Kerry-Ann Stimpson, Chief Marketing Officer of JMMB Group and the host of the Internal Marketing Podcast, to join me for this conversation. Today, we talk about dark social. We talk about how an organization's employees become ambassadors for the brand and its ideas. And we talk about setting up individuals within the organization for their own thought leadership. I'm Bill Sherman, and you're listening to Leveraging Thought Leadership. Ready? Let's begin. Welcome to the show, Kerry-Ann.
Thanks, Bill. I'm so very happy and excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
So you and I started a conversation a while ago around dark social and how it's impacting marketing, brand building, and thought leadership. And I'd love to continue that conversation here today. But let's start with a little bit of a level set. What is dark social and what are we talking about?
That's a great level set question because I don't think everybody's quite clear about what it is. And I just want to caution everybody when we say dark, people start to get a little scary. No, it's not quite that. But dark social. So first of all, social. When we say social, we mean social media or social media channels. But we're all familiar with the popular social media channels, LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, what have you. Now, dark social is a term that's typically used by marketers, but especially search engine optimization folks, right? Because ultimately what they're trying to determine is how are we getting people to our website? Are people learning about us and coming to us to find out more, request a demo, what have you? And the fact that dark social was even created came out of the fact that we recognized that people were coming to our website and asking for information and asking for demos via channels that we weren't really aware of, or certainly we can't control, right? So again, we know the typical social media channels, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Those are channels that we can track. We can track hashtags, we can track keywords, etc. And we can know usually when people mention our brands in those channels. But let's take and think about other social channels, email, WhatsApp, instant messaging, direct messaging. In those channels, people are still interacting. There's still a lot of socialization going on, but it's very difficult, if not impossible, to track what's going on in those email conversations and so on. But yet they're so very important because a lot of referrals are happening, and out of those conversations, people are reaching out. So dark social are really those social channels that people are communicating through and sharing information through that we're not able to track and put our finger on. And that's what it really is, yeah.
And this becomes important not only from an attribution sense of where did that lead come from, but also in a brand building sense, how are people learning about us? How do they perceive us or our organization? And then from a thought leadership perspective, how do ideas spread, right? Because we can look at an idea and say, oh, this rippled through these websites or on these posts on LinkedIn, but we have to admit and acknowledge that we only see the tip of the iceberg around conversations.
Absolutely. We really only see the tip of the iceberg. There's so much going on that we absolutely don't see. And that's what the dark social concept is meant to address.
And with that, I mean, our conversation here is an example, right? So it began on a LinkedIn post that you made specifically about dark social and how you have to think about an organization's employees and how they're showing up on social. And we got into a conversation. We took that offline and now we're coming back online, right?
Yeah.
And so in between what you could see on that post And now there was an offline conversation. So
Yes.
let's explore a little bit about something that I know you're passionate about, which is that internal communications with employees. How do you help make sure and how do you educate people about the importance of dark social within the organization?
So, from my perspective, I think, first of all, we always have to start from a place of understanding what's in it for me, right? I always subscribe to the belief that people ultimately work for themselves, right? They don't really work for the company. And so, whenever it is you want to educate them or onboard them into something new, you have to start from the place of, well, not only how is this benefiting the company or impacting the company, how is it impacting you? And as co owners of the brand or co ambassadors of the brand, we always want to be super sensitive to the fact that we need to always be in tune to what's happening in terms of the conversations happening about the brand, what are people saying and hearing about us. And that's really where it starts from an internal communication perspective. It's saying, look, there are these conversations happening in these channels that we can't control. We recognize that you actually exist in those channels because you got your own networks going on. How do we address the fact that we need to be partnering more as, again, co ambassadors of the brand and you as owners of your own personal brands? How can we be partnering to leverage what is really an awesome opportunity, not only to build a company brand, but also to build your personal brand as well through these channels that are clearly very active, very dynamic, and flourishing as we speak?
And so one of the things that I love is that alignment of an individual as an employee building their brand also reinforces the brand of the organization. And the more that you have stars within the organization, the more people say, oh, that's an organization that's going places.
Yeah.
They've got their stuff together if they can attract and retain that quality of people.
That's right, absolutely. And the fact too that the company is, I would say, quote unquote, allowing that. And I use the word allowing loosely because we recognize that it's still an ongoing conversation. There are a lot of companies that are still more so content with kind of clamping down and wanting to control the voices of their employees in the social space and not really permitting them and allowing them to flourish and build their own personal brand. So the fact that you see an organization with employees who are out there having the conversations, building their brands, producing valuable content, and people are saying, hey, that company is onto something in much the same way because they're catching the vision that it's a win-win. It's not just about spitting out company content, but it's about trust and working with and partnering with employees, recognizing that, hey, they're going to be out there talking in their social channels anyway. Why not make it a partnership? Why not make it work for everyone?
Well, and whether it's happening on publicly seen social or a friend texts and says, hey, I'm thinking of a financial services company. What do you think of JMMB? You work for them.
There we
That could
go.
happen by a text message, and that answer is going
Just,
to impact the brand,
just
right?
like that. Just
Yeah.
like that. Mhm.
So let's talk about, I think one of the things you have to do is accept that as a marketer, there are conversations that you cannot control about your brand, right? And that's a hard thing to accept. So you sit in a CMO seat on that. How do you
Yes.
think about that in terms of your organization?
So the first response is that I think that it's potentially scary, right? Because it's always great to want to be in control. Again, you're especially coming from a place of managing the official company accounts. You're putting out the branded messages that you sit and work so hard to create, and then recognizing that there's a whole other world of conversations going on. Again, in channels that you can, let alone you can't even control it, you can't even see it, so you don't even know what's happening. It can be potentially scary. But at the same time, I also see it as a place of potentially great opportunity, quite frankly. Because when you think about, again, how the company brand is seen and perceived, we are we're all about talking about ourselves, right? And I think people expect the company message to be positive. But what we recognize is that trust of institutions is at an all-time low these days. People tend to trust more so the word or the recommendation or referral of a friend, a family member, or a colleague, more so than they would trust the company marketing message. And so there is the opportunity. It's not about, well, I can't control it, so I'm just going to take to the bottle on this one. No, it's recognizing here's a great opportunity. What can we do to, if we can't control the conversation, what can we do to impact the conversation as best we can? And that's where I think is a great place to start as a marketer.
So let's stay there for a moment. What are you doing? I know you have some programs that you've set up on impacting conversations and even creating conversations where you said, okay, I can't control them, but I want more of them to happen. So let's talk about what you're doing.
Oh, great question. So first of all, we've been, and I'll just tell you exactly where we started. We recognized that we have employees who are very, very passionate about wanting to build their personal brands, right? And we literally kind of cast a net out there and said, hey, who is interested in establishing, building, growing a personal brand? We reached out to them. And the first thing we did was recognize there are so many of them. We brought them into the fold and started to have certain conversations. And the conversations weren't necessarily about the company brand, but they were about how can we support you in helping you to build that? So we started to talk about, well, providing training opportunities, personal brand building workshops, providing great content, helping them to start to meet each other and share examples of people who are out there in our industry who are doing the same thing and experiencing a tremendous amount of success. And so that's where we started. And what we also showed them is examples of how these conversations are happening. And especially, again, when you talk about what's happening in the industry, how others are benefiting and showing them that, hey, you can benefit as well. And so that's really where it started for us. It's identifying the right people with the right mindset who wanted to do this, and also taking it to this next step of empowering them with the tools, the training, the knowledge that they needed to get started, and then showing them the ultimate benefit to get them excited about wanting to jump in. So that's exactly where we started.
So you've now been running this program for a while, right? Who are some of the people who have taken those ideas and skills, and what are they doing, and how are they basically increasing their presence and their visibility? So tell me some of the success stories, if you will.
Sure, and that's a great question. So what I've found is that the outcome or the journeys that have taken place by the individual employees who are part of the program varies depending on where they are in the organization. I'll be very frank. So for the frontline team members who are more in sales, right? They recognize the powerful benefit in helping them to hit their sales targets. I'm just going to keep it real, right? So they have a sales target to hit, and they recognize that being out there and piggybacking on the company brand, putting their content out there, saying, hey, I'm available to have a conversation, and people reach out to them because they recognize they're part of the team. They've been having great success and they're very comfortable with that. What we've also found that's interesting, though, and it's been even inspiring the salespeople on the front line, is in our support areas like marketing, like operations, and so on. They have taken up the mantle of building their own personal brands, but they more so focus on their passion projects. I guess first of all, they don't have the immediate burden, quote unquote, of a sales target, but they recognize that there is room for them to build their personal brands, and they have started to do things like travel blogs. Folks have gone into life coaching, done certifications and created pages and delivering great content on life building skills and so on. And what we found, again, is that the brand benefits from those people also, because, again, you recognize that, hey, this organization has employees with people who are living very balanced, happy, fulfilling lives. And it's not just all about the work. And it's just been a wonderful thing to observe and see how it's been really benefiting so many team members who've chosen to jump in with both feet on this.
I think one of the things that stands out to me is when people speak from a place of passion, it's easier to talk about ideas. And this is the place that I want to start making a connection with thought leadership, right? Is it's very hard if you're from an organizational perspective, to try and get everyone at the organization excited to talk about the big idea that the C-suite has, right?
Yeah.
Because they may not have as much comfort talking about ideas. And
Yeah.
so, what I like about this program and saying, hey, get used to talking about things you're passionate about. You build those skills as an individual for talking about ideas. And whether that's life coaching, travel, whatever, then you can start saying, oh, I can talk about other things and it's not as scary, right? Because I
Exactly.
think a lot of people shut down in talking about ideas because they don't know where to start.
Yeah, yeah, I would totally agree with that. And if I may use my own personal experience as an
Please,
example,
please.
right? Thank you. Because I'm a CMO, and everybody would probably think, well, you're an executive, and my job is to represent the brand, and I'm totally comfortable with that. But I personally even had reached a point where, in my own journey, I said, I felt like I kept hiding behind the company brand. How can I step out and add value as an individual marketer of just about 20 years experience to an industry of people who really just wanted to hear about me and my experience? And that kind of led to the internal marketing podcast. Because when you talk about thought leadership, it's about having conversations in a way that no one else is having them. That's where it
Mhm.
starts. It's looking at that landscape and saying, hey, everybody, so even if it's travel, everybody's talking about travel. What's that aspect of travel or traveling that people aren't talking about? We have tons of marketing podcasts. How many podcasts are dedicated and digging into the area of internal marketing and employee advocacy? At the time, I could find none. And so that's really where it started for me. And just to underscore your point, that's really at the heart of thought leadership. It's really recognizing there is room for me at the table to have the conversation, especially if I'm able to find an angle that I can generate content that pours into people in a way that no one else is pouring into in this space.
If you are enjoying this episode of Leveraging Thought Leadership, please make sure to subscribe. If you'd like to help spread the word about the podcast, please leave a 5-star review and share it with your friends. We are available on Apple Podcast, Spotify, and all major platforms, as well as at leveragingthoughtleadership.com. And internal marketing for you is a bit of a passion, right?
It totally is. Yeah.
So I think from the perspective that if you're responsible for marketing and you cannot get the people inside the organization excited about your ideas, it is unlikely to impossible to get
Yeah.
anyone outside of the organization excited about them.
You hit the nail on the head. As I always say, if our employees aren't passionate about the brand, how are we going to get our customers to be passionate? Because the customers feed off of the employees. And if the employees aren't passionate about or able to deliver on the brand promise, then we're inauthentic and our clients will totally smell that from a mile down the road.
So, given that this is both a passion for you and this is where our intersection really lies, how do you get people in the organization to feel that excitement? As you said, there's always this tension between I work for myself and I'm self-interested versus I'm with this organization. How do you navigate that tension? How do you get people excited?
Well, it's a couple of things. I mean, first of all, I always like to start from a place of acknowledging what's really at the foundation of a lot of the tension that occurs in these kinds of conversations, which is you have the company and the brand on one side getting very nervous about empowering employees to start using their voices. And then you have employees who are equally nervous that, hey, will I lose my job? What have you? So from my perspective, it starts with the basic housekeeping of do you need whatever policies and procedures around social media usage in place to make sure that those boxes are checked? I totally would recommend that, and that's a place to start. However, in terms of getting people excited now, again, it comes back to, well, how do we identify the benefit to the individual, the benefit to the company, and allow those 2 points to intersect, right? So from where we sit, we say, well, if travel is your passion and you want to use a voice for travel, how can we support you in helping to share your voice? First of all, we give you the permission to do that. We give you the freedom to do that, rather. So they don't feel like, well, I need to be careful about what I say. We're like, look, we trust you. We've employed you. Go ahead and do your thing. They get the benefit of that. We create community with everybody who wants to be a part of this journey. So people are sharing ideas. People are learning from each other. People are being inspired, because there are some people who come in a little bit timid. They want to speak, but they're not quite sure. Their imposter syndrome is a thing. How do we build community around each other to support each other in being bold and using our voices? And then ultimately sharing those wins, because we can get real intellectual about how great this thing is, but we invite everybody to come back to the table and share the wins. How has this been benefiting me? How has this been working for me? And of course, the company can also say, well, this is how we see the benefit to the organization as well. So it's a multifaceted thing, but I'd say those are the ways to get folks excited and keep them engaged.
Well, and JMMB is at its heart a financial services company, right?
Yes, it is.
Which by nature tends to be a little bit more cautious and having to pay attention to regulation and compliance. And so this message of we trust you to go out and speak and to talk about your passions. I know that there are many organizations that aren't in financial services or aren't heavily regulated that can look at this and go, well, if they can do that, so can I.
Absolutely. And it starts with, first of all, knowing your brand, knowing your why, your purpose as a brand. And JMMB's purpose, and yes, we're financial services, but we're non-traditional in the sense that the purpose why we exist is to cause people to experience love and to realize the inherent greatness that's within them. And that's not something we sat down and made up. That's literally the basis on which we were founded. So when you start from a place of why, you attract people who share that why, and in how they operate, because you and them are totally on the same page, then what they emanate lines up with your purpose and your why. So again, that's where the confidence comes from. So it's not about being nervous that we're going to have some folks out there spouting content that's going to bring the brand into disrepute, because we're confident that we know our why as a team or employees, how we've onboarded them, how we've maintained the culture within the company. We're all aligned around that why. And so everything that's going to come from the brand and come from both the personal content of our employees and the company account is all going to line up just the same.
Let's stay on this for a moment. You talked about that why and that mission to experience love. How do you internally communicate that, right? Because that's an internal comms challenge where I could see some people saying, oh, that's just a poster on the wall, or that's corporate speak. It's a little bit squishy, but really, right?
Yeah.
How do you communicate that in a way that people feel it's real? Because it's a bold idea.
It is. And, my head of culture will probably say, first and foremost, we don't communicate it, because communicating it would suggest that we're really just telling you something and then you subscribe to it.
That's a fair call out. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. And I mean, it's okay, because I get it. A lot of people feel that way. And some people feel that way too about internal marketing. But when I talk about starting from the why and the purpose, it starts from, well, who are the people that we are onboarding, recruiting, and attracting? So that ensuring that the people who we are bringing into the organization, their values are aligned with our values. So once they come in, yes, they're going to go through the onboarding process, orientation, onboarding. We have certain sessions that dig into helping us to make sure that we are clear about the mission, the vision, the purpose, and so on. But because we are already aligned on the same level with the purpose and the why, then the internal comms, it's really just about reinforcement at that point. It's not even about trying to promote something or to sell an idea or promote an idea. It's just about reinforcement and maintaining that space for that to flourish and grow and continue to remain at an optimal level. That's the only way I can say it. So it's really about culture maintenance is what I would more so say it is than it is just straight, communication. So when we communicate, it's from a place of, well, we're already aligned. This is what we're doing to make sure that we maintain that alignment.
And making sure that when something new is shared, you can go back to that why and say, okay, does this align with what we're trying to stand for?
Totally. I can give you a great example. There
Please.
was an incident, and I talk about it all the time, where a fellow executive was disappointed in something that I had not done, and he was very upset. It was a project that didn't go the way that he thought it should have went, and he was very upset. And he came into my he confronted me in the hallway, and he was really very upset. And I understood why. I totally didn't take that away from him. But he was getting louder and he was getting too aggressive at that point. And what I said to him was this. I said, okay, I'm hearing you, but listen, how you're speaking to me right now is inconsistent with the values that you and I subscribe to as part of this organization. So I recommend let's step back, take a minute, and then come back and talk about this when we're at a place that we can do so, again, in a way that's consistent with our values. And he just stopped. He just stopped because, again, there's that alignment. You get what I'm saying? It's not about I'm trying to sell an idea and is he going to believe
You
me
held the
or
mirror
trust
up
me?
and it was the moment where you went, oh, you're right.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah. And because he had already signed on to it, I was signed on to it. We are confident that we were all signed on to it. And so that's really what it's all about. It's making sure that we're on the same page. And so when you work and operate in a culture like that, magic like that happens where you just get it. Everybody gets it. And we can hold each other to account in that regard.
And this is, I think, the place in terms of when the culture is strong and it reinforces. Then going back to where we started this conversation, if you have good people that you trust and you have a strong culture, then you don't need to be afraid of dark social.
That's right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's what we see happening, because I'll just again use another great example. When we do our brand awareness studies for JMMB, we are among the top brands in Jamaica for financial services, right? However, when you look at like our share of voice or ad spend, we're not at the top at all. I would say my major competitors easily spend about 3 or 4 times on marketing than we're able to spend. But when you look at things like brand sentiment, brand mentions, especially on legitimate social now, which I think will also translate and impact dark social as well, which we obviously can't measure. But when I look at brand sentiment and brand mentions, we dominate sentiment, and most months dominate mentions. And when we look at where those mentions are coming from, they're not coming from our company account. They're coming from people. They're coming from customers. They're coming from team members. They're coming from friends and family. Say, hey, I hear JMB is great. My aunt is a customer and she loves it. And we literally can almost stay silent most days and know that it's the voices of the people who are aligned with us and are loyal to us to carry our message, even when we are not able to do so because we don't have the resources to do it. So to me, that's the ultimate benefit, and it's just wonderful.
Well, and this is where the embracing of allies and ambassadors to share a message allows you to punch well above your weight. And as you said, it's not determined by advertising spend, right?
Yeah.
And you can get an idea or a message reach further, be trusted more than, if you bought every billboard in Jamaica.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Just like that. Just like that. Because the billboard wouldn't even enjoy the same credibility either.
Exactly. Yeah. So as we begin to wrap up, one of the questions I want to ask you is, you've mentioned you've been sort of honing your marketing skills over the last 20 years. And one of the things that I've heard is almost a shift from classical trained marketing to accepting what you can control and what you support. What advice would you give to someone who is starting out in a marketing role, who's concerned about social, concerned about thought leadership, based on what you've learned?
Wow, that is an excellent, excellent question. And I'm just going to take a pause right now to make sure that I'm going to answer it in the way that I intend. Um, I think it goes back to when I talk about my experience right now with GMMB, recognizing that depending on where you work, whether it's a startup, whether it's a major organization, most times we as marketers probably have or will never have all the resources that we need to do everything that we need to do. But what I've so come to accept is the power of your army, the power of an army of people that you can create as a brand who can carry your message for you. Now, the obvious army that I think a lot of us marketers learn about in marketing school is our customers, right? So we love our customers, and loyal customers are awesome, awesome advocates and ambassadors.
That's why Net Promoter Score got all the buzz that it did for so many years.
Absolutely. It's a thing. It's absolutely a thing. Now, when we talk about now on the employee side, which is now my area of focus, is that I think for too long, marketers have not placed the level of importance on employee engagement and employee empowerment to be advocates as we should, right? And we need to recognize that as we put our messages out there each and every single day, and we talk about all these wonderful promises we're making to the customer, we're not doing enough to engage the army of people who need to be delivering on that promise. What are we doing to invest in them and empowering them? And once you do that, again, when you talk about an efficient and effective way of doing marketing, you can almost kick back some days, as I said, and they're carrying the message for you. And they're having the conversations in those dark social spaces with their own networks of family and friends who trust them. And you don't even know it's happening, but because you've so engaged them and empower them, you can literally go to sleep at night and sleep very well knowing that it's a message that you know you want people to hear. And that's my message to marketers. It's let's not continue to undervalue our team of employees. They are the advocates that you need to have in your arsenal to leverage the brand, build it, and to drive growth.
I think that's a wonderful place to wrap this conversation. Kerry-Ann, thank you for joining us today. And if someone wants to, I know you mentioned your podcast, to find you, where do they find you?
Thank you so much. This has been a great conversation, Bill, and I appreciate your having me. Well, I'm on LinkedIn, Kerry-Ann Stimpson, and feel free to search for my name to find my podcast. Just Google the Internal Marketing Podcast, and it's going to come up. So click on subscribe, have a listen, give any feedback that you'd like, and share it with a friend or colleague who you think they'd find the information valuable as well. So I look forward to connecting with everyone. I'm also on Twitter as well.
Thank you, Kerry-Ann. If you're interested in organizational thought leadership, then I invite you to subscribe to the OrgTL newsletter. Each month, we talk about the people who create, curate, and deploy thought leadership on behalf of their organizations. Go to the website orgtl.com and choose Join Our Newsletter. I'll leave a link to the website as well as my LinkedIn profile in the show notes. Thanks for listening, and I look forward to hearing what you thought of the show.